a popular topic that has been sent in by many people. We will do a combination and just ask them all as one right here. Have you been following AJ Styles' recent comments about Dixie Carter?
No, I have not. Please enlighten me as to what these comments were.
I'm going to read you a quote, and then feel free to say whatever you think. Here's a quote from AJ Styles. This was, I'm trying to see where this was from. Twitch. He did a live stream on Twitch to give his opinions.
He twitched.
He twitched.
You know, that would have been, Gene Anderson would have been the perfect spokesperson for Twitch.
Oh, come on. That's awful.
I'll go to hell for that. I love Gene. Gene was a great guy. Anyway, go ahead.
Vince Russo, as a person, I love the guy. And we butted heads as far as him writing, even in TNA. But I realized when we butted heads, it was because he was getting things from Dixie the whole time. It must have been very difficult to work with this woman, who has no idea how wrestling works, and wanted everything to be done to it, and it didn't make any sense. We butted heads with him as a writer, but due to Dixie Carter getting involved a lot with creative. Do I believe Dixie ruined Impact? Well, it was TNA back then, and 100%. Impact, there was a time when it was really gaining ground. The problem was, Dixie wanted it to be WWE light, and that's not what people wanted. They wanted to see something else. All she had to do was let us do what we do. It was really that simple. Had she left it to the writers, I think TNA would still be around and be bigger than what they are, but not knowing what's best for business hurt TNA. Now, what are your thoughts on his views about the inner workings of TNA, Dixie Carter, and that it wasn't Vince Russo's writing, it was that Dixie was telling him what to write?
Oh, boy. AJ has some, as we've spoken about here recently, has some controversial viewpoints, such as he said there's questions yet to be asked on whether the earth is flat or round. Wasn't that one of them?
That indeed was one of them.
Look, here's the thing. He's right in certain respects, but for the wrong reasons. He's right. Ultimately, the responsibility for the shit show that was TNA wrestling was Dixie Carter's. And much of that was because of the person that she hired to be in charge of the creative, Vince Shitstain. And one of Vince Shitstain's talents, he does have some, none of them are related to wrestling, but one of his talents is the ability to be able to talk to somebody. And also because I think he in his warped, demented mind legitimately believes this, so he's very believable when he tells guys this, is that, well, I'd love to do this and that and the other thing, or we could do this and that, but they won't let me, or Dixie wants me to do this, or Vince wants me to do that, or whatever for standards and practices, or whatever the fuck. Basically, Vince Russo sat down with AJ Styles and realized that he could convince AJ that he's a great guy, which he obviously did. And that, you know, the writing, unfortunately, Dixie wants this. Dixie didn't know what the fuck she wanted. Dixie was like some fucking body who'd never goddamn seen food cooked before, going into a fucking 5-star restaurant and trying to tell him what she wanted prepared. What the fuck? Dixie had talent she liked. She thought, and I'm not saying that in a inappropriate way, but she thought that Hernandez, which she was correct in this, should be a Latino Mexican superstar at one point. And you know, I fully agreed with that. And unfortunately for Hernandez, she had picked an idiot to write her show who didn't know how to get that guy over. And when I left, that was the end of that, because he didn't understand it. So yeah, Dixie was responsible for creative in terms of who she hired to be in charge of it. And Jeff Jarrett, to his credit, while he was there, was able to balance most of the bullshit out with actual shit that made sense or wouldn't harm talent when you presented him with a better way to do it. The whole time that I was there until Jeff got sideways with Dixie and was sent home, Dixie may have sat in on a few production meetings, not that many, sometimes she wasn't there at television, and other times she would get there right before taping started, flying in from somewhere. She'd get just in time to get her makeup done to go out in front of the fans and take posed pictures holding the TNA title belt. But if you had a creative question, or if I did, I went to Jeff Jarrett. And if the talent did, because Vince Russo was head of creative, obviously, and I was not going to go to Vince Russo to try to help him make sense of shit that he obviously hadn't made sense of. So we would get the shit, and I would go to Jeff Jarrett, and I'd say, Jeff, what about if we do this? We get in the same place, but it won't make so-and-so look like a fucking idiot or be so phony. And he'd say, yeah, you're right, let's do that. There was never any consultation to Dixie Carter on fucking creative. AJ was there before I got there, and he was there after I was gone, and he was there after Jeff Jarrett was gone. During the time that Jeff Jarrett was there was never any consultation and I was the head producer, by anybody on creative or with Dixie Carter on the day of the TV show. Now, I'm sure since Russo also made it a habit to talk to her as much as possible so he could poison her mind and take advantage of her because of the fact that she didn't know anything about wrestling, and he does have that talent to convince people who don't know anything about fucking wrestling that he knows something about it. So I'm sure they talked all the time. But to say that he could have done a bunch of other stuff for AJ and it was doing shit that AJ didn't want because of Dixie is fucking ridiculous. And it's just that AJ, I hate to say this, I like him. He's great talent. Apparently, he's easily led to believe things by people. We know he's religious. He believes that the earth, there's questions to be asked on fucking flatness or roundness or the shape of the earth. And he believes Vince Russo when Vince Russo tells him he could do other shit, but it's somebody else's fault. I talked to a couple of talents long after I'd been gone, and they'd been gone from TNA, but were there in that time period, who were convinced somehow that it was Jeff that didn't like them instead of fucking Russo. I said, you'd have been someone that Jeff Jarrett would have really enjoyed if he was writing the show by himself, but no, Russo was writing the show and Jeff was trying to run talent relations and fucking creative and everything else important in the company, because all Dixie could do was hire her school friends to office positions and have her pictures taken for magazine stories where she looked like she was auditioning, which was actually true. She wanted to be a real housewife of Nashville on television because the douchebag's fucking egotistical. So that was the relationship. And bless AJ. I guess maybe they bonded over the invisible man in the sky, him and Shitstain, because people who believe in that kind of thing will overlook any egregious fault in another person because they bond over that fucking level of insanity they have about what they believe is true and supernatural and etc.
Do you think there's any way TNA could have succeeded under Dixie Carter, even if Vince Russo wasn't there? Was she that big of a problem at the top that it couldn't have succeeded no matter what?
I mean, it's just, amateur hour bullshit. They could have succeeded at a certain level, but at the level they were trying to be at, it was over her head. She was a fucking fence post turtle. You got fence post turtles up in New Jersey, don't you?
I've never even heard that expression before. No, I don't think we do.
Every so often when you're riding down the road out in the country or on your fucking walk or whatever, you will come across a turtle sitting on top of a fence post. And the fucking first thought you have is, this is not that turtle's natural environment. He didn't get there by himself. He doesn't know what to do now that he's there, and he's going to need some help to get out of it. Dixie Carter was a fence post turtle.